Greetings, flesh creatures. It is I, Megatron. On behalf of TFYLP, I want to congratulate you for listening to the most refined collective podcast on this miserable little planet Earth. Yes. Here you'll find knowledgeable fans discussing every aspect of Transformers and beyond. Now, enjoy the show while I continue my path to complete conquest of all of you miserable biological entities. Predacons, terrorize!
Hello, welcome to TFYLP, episode 408 for, November 30th? So tonight I have with me a Destron.
Forever.
I have an Anna.
Greetings.
I have a Christian.
What's up?
And I have a Paul.
You're on
You're muted. You failed that.
You did
nice.
Horrible fail.
Nice.
That
There
was
you go.
fantastic.
How did I?
We're glad you're here. Anyway.
These buttons just are so hard to use.
So tonight, Anna has not been on the show for a while because, life and work gets in the way sometimes.
I teach classes at night.
Yeah.
Ta-da. That's all.
So as soon as she got back, I said, you know what the perfect topic is for tonight? Let's talk about these rules that Anna has, or just rules in general. Like, what are our collecting rules? This will be fantastic. We can all talk about, the wonderfulness of how we collect Transformers here. So, yes, it's Microcasters Plus. That's right.
It is Microcasters Plus. It's Microcasters Plus Plus.
It's true. Sometimes we take over the main show. Is anyone saying that's a bad thing?
Perchance we're double casters.
There we go.
Macro.
We're always Macrocasters. We never make small shows. Anyway, regardless, before we already get distracted tonight, I would just like to start with saying, why do we need to have rules? And I feel like if you don't have some sort of guidelines, rules, or something to help you kind of cull your collection to keep from buying everything, you end up out of control in several
Oh, God.
ways.
Look at his face.
What?
Please continue. Yes. I want to know more.
Absolutely, and I know the reaction that I'm getting from one of my fellows. Anyway, so the reason you might want to do this, maybe for monetary reasons, maybe because your spouse yells at you if you buy too many things. It may be because you run out of space. It may be because you run out of things to collect. Who knows why?
How do you run out of things to collect? That's impossible.
That was a joke. I was attempting humor, but I'm kind of, monotone. So my jokes don't translate well. Anyway, so you might need rules for one of those reasons, right? Because there are a lot of things out there with the Transformers label on them these days. There's many different toy lines and other types of collectibles. There's all the third-party crap that I keep falling into. If you buy all of that, it gets a little expensive and expansive. And I can't get in contact with Peter right now.
I want to jump in real quick. Christian asked me to be on tonight because I thought we were having a therapy session for him, but it turns out this is an intervention for me.
Surprise.
So,
actually, therapy session got rescheduled for 2 weeks.
It's actually a pick on Anna session, but we're going to start it with the therapy
Well, I think probably everybody, we could all talk about, some of the various issues that we've had. So,
I was under the impression this is a no therapy podcast.
Yeah, I know. As Anna says that we're not allowed to give advice or something like that, right? Didn't he say that because we can't be I can't remember what your whole spiel is.
We're not allowed to give mental health advice. We're not allowed to give mental health advice. I'm not. The rest
You're
of you are also
There's
not.
a conflict. Yeah.
I'm definitely not. So, but yeah, no, I know that I myself, at least, like kind of what you had touched on before. When I first started collecting, I was like collecting everything that had Transformers on it, and it got to be a lot. And I was like, wait a minute, like I have all this stuff, and I'm not sure that I even want, all of it or half of it or whatever. And all the movie stuff went on clearance, and boy, let me get it all. And then I'm like, why do I have these totes full of movie figures and whatever? So yeah.
I realized a long time ago, one problem that was really bothering me was this whole concept of checkbox figures, right? Like I made this flawed rule that I just wanted one of everybody. But why do I need certain figures that are kind of crappy if I don't even like them? And that's when I realized that I needed more robust rules to keep myself from owning things that annoy me.
Well, that's my question. So to like get into it, I know, Anna, your big rule has been a one per character rule, that you want to have the definitive for Anna version of each character, like one per character. And I've never actually seen you abide by that rule, but like that is the rule. So like, how did that come to be?
I've only broken that rule for half the characters on my desk right now. I'll have you know. 2/3. No, half. Well, I was gonna hold up this guy and be like, this is definitely my only Rumble, guys. Let me tell you, the only one I own, for sure. It is not. I have 3. So the reason I came up with the one per character rule is twofold. One, that it made sense to me. Like, logically, I just thought, like, I need one of every character. But that turned into checkbox territory, which bugged me personally. But when I started sharing my space with another human, he started to influence me, and that he only wanted me to have so many things. So we talked a lot about, my collecting and how it could easily become a virus that takes over the entire house. And what we could do in order to kind of, stymie that a little bit, hold it back. And the thing we came up with was, if we just do one per character. I don't think he quite realized, it was like 2014 at the time, that we were going to get into obscure character territory with Combiner Wars, making a bunch of unique characters that don't usually get toys. And then the Titan's Returns line doing the same thing with Headmasters, and it just got more obscure after that. So it's a kind of flawed rule to limit the number, but the idea was to limit the spread. My toys weren't supposed to multiply like rabbits. They were supposed to multiply like toys.
So my other question about the one per character is what do you define as a character? For example, like Optimus Prime, like would you say that the G1 Optimus Prime versus the movie Optimus Prime versus IDW Optimus, like, on down the list of these different fictional representations, like, could you have one for each, like,
Universal
version?
Stream. Universal Stream. We got to nail the terminology. Different Optimi for different Universal Streams. Come on, Christian, don't roll your eyes.
No, I'm not rolling my eyes. I'm just wondering if Lucas and Anna know what that is.
Oh.
Sure.
I'm with you. I'm always with you.
To answer Lucas's question, I think that is where things get really fuzzy really fast. Because, it's sometimes I make that exception, but I kind of feel like it's kind of a flimsy exception sometimes, especially when the designs are really similar. Or, like, one thing I had to get past really quick, and one thing I'm still trying to learn how to get past and I need to get back to, is only owning characters I care about, right? So, like, I don't need to own Cyberverse Optimus Prime because I don't think Cyberverse Optimus Prime is a very interesting character. Like, I really don't think he's interesting. I think he's a boring, generic Prime type character. Whereas, G1 Prime is something I need to own because he has, like, some sort of impact on me and blah, blah, blah. So that is where it gets really fuzzy because, a lot of times characters like Prime look very similar, or Soundwaves or Megatrons or whatever else. So it's tricky. But I do frequently count the different versions of different characters. Like, it bothers me right now that I currently have MP Hot Rod, but I also have a Legend Skill, a Hot Rod / Rodimus. He's more of a Rodimus, but mostly a Hot Rod. I don't really know which he is, because he's kind of an awkward build in between the two. But it bothers me that I have those two. But it doesn't bother me that I have both my MP Hot Rod and Animated Hot Rod, because they're a Rodimus, whichever he is. Because they're very different looking, they're very different characters, so I'm cool with it. And like I said, it gets flaky really fast. That's it. Continue.
Yeah, I don't know. So, I mean, the question is like, have you modified your rules as you've been going? And, obviously all of our collecting has changed over the years and whatnot. Have you... Because you came up with that rule in 2014. So, I mean, 6 years later here.
So, I kind of messed it up. And I messed it up, not surprisingly, when I started hanging out with you all. Which is not all that shocking. And really, I could only blame Lucas, because I started hanging out with the Kansas City folks when I moved out this way, who were collectors. I had never found a collecting group, right? I never found a group of other toy collectors to hang with. So as soon as I did, I started to pick up bad habits. And what ruined it for me was Ultra Magnus collecting. I said, Ultra Magnus is my favorite Transformer. I'm going to get all the Ultra Magni, because that's totally fine. And what I realized is that suddenly meant that, well, maybe I should also have more than one Bumblebee. Maybe I should also have more than one RC. Maybe I should also have more than one Soundwave. These are all my favorite designs and characters.
The
so why not?
trap has sprung.
Right. And here's the problem. The part of my collection that makes me the least happy and possibly the most unhappy is literally in my Ultra Magnus collection. I hate it. It brings me no pleasure when I look over and say, God, I have so many of this guy, and half of them suck. Why do I have these? It just totally backfired, because now I have a bunch of Bumblebees, but I like all of them. I have a bunch of RCs, but I like all of them. I have a bunch of Soundwaves, and I like all of them.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What? So you've talked about your rules, but what qualifies a toy as sucking? If that bothers you. What makes something quality and not quality?
And that is super subjective, but that is a rule that I think is very important to me that I'm not going to change. I shouldn't own a toy I don't like the checkbox figures I was talking about before. Yeah. If I am owning a toy just because I need a version of that character. I was trying to find something on my desk that I hate, but really there isn't anything, because I've gone through and gotten rid of the figures I don't like many times in my collecting. For instance, I have this G2 Swindle here. If I didn't like this figure, it would not be worth it for me to own it just to say I have a Swindle, right? I do like this figure. I do, this is one of the Combiner Wars designs I think is really cool. Because he is equal tilt. That's the whole reason. But still, if I didn't like this figure, I shouldn't own it. I guess unless I like the combine mode, that's getting flaky again. So easy to get flaky on these.
You can make up whatever rules you want, and and justify them wholeheartedly, full-throatedly. You can be like, yeah, these are my rules, and defend them in any direction that you want, do good or bad, and break the rules if you need to. You can bend around them. I don't break the rules. I bend them a lot. Who's that?
Magnus?
No. Look at Christian. Look at he's having a meltdown.
Sideswipe.
Sideswipe. Sideswipe. You were right the first time. Good job. Sorry. Go ahead. I have in my collecting Transformers, I have a different set of rules than I do for everything else. Star Wars had a set of rules. G.I. Joe has a set of rules that I try really hard to adhere to. And it's a mostly one per character type thing. Mostly, depending on the character. I'm not a Snake Eyes or Storm Shadow guy, so I don't need 400 Snake Eyes and Storm Shadows. But do I need the Battle Core versions of everybody? No. And I know this. I'm on a Joe tangent a little bit, but one per character is fine with Joe's. Mask is an everything thing. I need all the mask stuff, but I don't need all the international variants except for the European variants and maybe the South American variants, which pretty much puts me at everything. So brain damage. For my class, I say classic Masters of the Universe, but that's not what I mean. For my original Masters of the Universe stuff, yeah, I need everything. I need all the weirdo Italian stuff. I need I need some of the weird knockoffs. I need because brain damage. What else do I collect? I collect Turtles, Ninja Turtles, just the original series stuff from Playmates. Do I need everything there? No. When I run out of things to buy, will I buy everything? Will I get bored and get it? Yeah.
You know, the thing that's kind of amazing when you think about all of these lines is like how many toys there are. Like Masters of the Universe, like how many like even if you did one per character on Masters of the Universe, I mean, you're talking a fair amount of characters. Same thing with Transformers is the same way. Like at least Ninja Turtles, like you could get some weird, like there's a fair amount of stuff. You know, and I guess, again, like, do you count the turtles, all the variants of the accessories and all that kind of stuff, too? But
yeah, and that's the thing is, you encapsulated it perfectly right there. Do you count X? Whether it's turtle variants or weirdo characters or, you know, different iterations of whatever thing you've defined. It's all subjective, like someone said earlier. I don't know. For me with Transformers, in 1984, a 4-year-old Peter said, I'm going to own all these Transformers. And then in the early 90s, he found an ad saying that there were Transformers in Europe that weren't available in the States. And he read a letter by some dude named James Roberts in the back of a comic book in like 1990 that said, we have figures here that you don't get over there, and we have figures here that we didn't get that you guys got. And I was like, oh, so it's different in different countries. So I need to go to different countries and figure out the rules for those countries. And then in 95, 96, I got online and was like, there's all sorts of stuff in Japan that I just had no idea about. So my rules didn't narrow my scope so much as they exploded my scope and turned me into a madman. And we're making progress. We have a lot of toys, and we're going to have all the space and have all the toys. The end.
See, there you go. See, now, for you imagined the rules would limit your collection, and that's kind of like how you brought upon this topic, right? Little did you know that with Peter, it turns out his rule, like, that he lived by from the time that he was 4, was to get all of them, and so that's actually exploded his collection.
I think I ran into that a little bit, too. Like, I don't have the scope of Peter. At all. Like, I don't collect that much stuff. I cannot own that many items. I would get confused because I'm not an organized person by nature, so it doesn't work super well for me. However, kind of the same thing almost happened when I kind of expanded my knowledge of Transformers. When I started getting into other stuff, I kind of did the same thing Peter did, and then I realized there were all these other characters. You know, at first saying one per character was like, well, I'm going to go get the, you know, first season cast of the G1 show. And then it's like, well, there's also these other guys that they're starting to get cool toys. They didn't have those before, so I need them too. And then I started to, you know, read. I went back and read the G1 Marvel comics. It was like, oh, all these new characters that I didn't realize were here. And then I went back and watched some of the Japanese cartoons, and then suddenly I cared about those characters. And then now I'm reading the IDW comics, and I'm looking at those older MMC figures now and thinking, maybe I should get more of those. They're not as expensive as they used to be, because I'm starting to care about those characters. And it's just like, it can keep expanding because the way you tell a story in Transformers, unfortunately, is you keep adding characters that most of the time you just blow them up in a couple of pages or issues or episodes. But, you know, you just keep throwing in more characters. And the more characters you throw in, the better it is.
It turns out, I think, that a lot of these stories are made up by toy companies, that their objective is to sell more toys, and so that's why they introduce the additional characters, I think. I thought that's what I hear.
When I was a kid and started out for the first time, you know, I started out at my Blockbuster, everyone knows that, and then I got online and saw just how vast the Transformers toy line was. I started out like Peter, I was like, I want all of this. as, I learned more. Beast Wars was happening. I figured out Beast Wars was connected to G1, and then the Unicron trilogy started, and there was Robots of Disguise and all of this stuff, and I was like, wow, this is too much stuff. There is no way I will realistically be able to ever get all of it. So we're not going to do that. We're just going to get things I like.
But in 1984, when I made that promise to myself, there were only 27 characters, or 28 if you count Bumper. But there was
14 years later.
Right. So when I made that commitment or whatever, the scope was a little bit different. Yeah.
I agree with that. When I first made the one per character commitment, it sounded reasonable. It was like, I'll own 90 figures at one point.
I remember 90.
But the one thing I feel like it kind of, can get you in trouble if you are one per character is, again, like, Hasbro Pulse Select Exclusive G2 Sandstorm or whatever, like all this kind of stuff where you're like, oh, well, like, there's the one character, so then you end up getting that because that's the only representation of that character, whereas, like, you might not necessarily get it otherwise, but you're, like, again, checking that box with that character.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
however, sometimes with certain characters, even though you have just the one per, like we talked about Masterpiece Mirage a couple of shows ago, and there is no Masterpiece Mirage. There are 17 third-party representations that are an effigy of Masterpiece Mirage. So box checking becomes complicated when you factor in third party. Now, I actually have rules for third party stuff that don't adhere to my get everything rules that that are for official product. So some of it's box checking, some of it's that just looks cool, like the Gen 2 Watermelon Mirage. He just looks cool, and he scratches an itch, but not an official itch. But it's an official itch, but it's not a released official itch. Set me on fire! I want that toy. I have it, but I want the original now. I'm gonna find it. I know where it's at. Anyway, so
would that
yes.
be
About that later.
Rick's house? Where that is?
So I have one really, I wouldn't even say rule. I'm going to talk about rules versus guidelines in a minute, but I only have one rule, really. And it's one I try to stick to as often as possible, very few exceptions, and that is, in this day and age, I don't think it's necessary to spend more than $100 on a toy. Generally what I collect is Generations. Yeah, bye, Peter. Generally what I collect is Generations, or I collect Studio Series or BotBots, or, that sort of anything that Hasbro's making. Generally speaking, Hasbro doesn't make figures that cost over $100. The Titans are an exception, obviously. Combiners sets that they're doing right now, that's the same thing, but they're also
Unicron
figures. That's cool too. But the idea there is to kind of make myself think twice about spending lots of money, because that's to a lot of people a lot of money on one thing. Is it really worth it to get $150 Masterpiece Hound at the same price where I could get 8 Earthrise Deluxes? No, I don't think so.
And brought up in the chat, Zaldron says, you don't spend more than $100 per figure. So does that mean that you don't have any fun with your collection? And I'd like to give you an opportunity to answer that, honest.
No. In fact, I guess now is a good time to talk about my rules versus guidelines deal. I think having any sort of hard and fast, I can never break this, I have to do this thing rule would take all the fun out of collecting for me forever, and I would quit. I mean, there's no reason to put yourself in a box. There just isn't. Don't do it. Don't have rules. Have guidelines, have general ideas about what you want to do. Like, I don't generally collect Masterpiece now, but it's not a hard and fast rule. If a Masterpiece Jazz ever comes down the line, I will give it a real hard look. If they ever actually release Masterpiece Raiden, yeah, I'm gonna get that. Give me some train bots. But in general, no, I don't collect Masterpiece. So yeah, I have plenty of fun with my collection. I have a lot of fun with my collection. I think putting rules on it would make it so I don't. Putting a guideline on it means that I don't ruin my life with it.
And I think that's really going to vary from person to person because, like, for some of us have, a certain type of quirkiness where fulfilling rules actually brings us pleasure. Like, I love it when I follow my rules. Like, I get very excited about following my rules. When I, like, successfully get all the things on my checklist done before I log off my computer at night, even if it's 1 a.m, I feel way better because I'm like, ooh, I made it. I did my rule. I did it. It literally says on my calendar, you may not leave work until you do this, that, and the other as a command. And, that's just my personality. That's just how I am, though.
Good.
So, like, when I do, during this break, clean out and go back to 1 per character for the most part, it's going to make me feel better. Like, it will actually bring me, like, more pleasure than owning the multiple characters because the rules do actually excite me. But that's just me, that's my weirdness, my quirk. Some people have in collecting and some people don't have that. Some people need it more open-ended, like Christian, so they can have fun with it. Like, it's literally how I have fun is by kind of culling my collection to fit my own rules. That will make me happier.
I didn't realize we were quite so opposite. That's interesting.
It's great.
I think my open-endedness allows me to experience stuff like Cyberverse, where normally I would just say, get away with that kid stuff and get it out of here. But if we do a review, like you've got Cyberverse RC and B and stuff, you're like, hey, these are actually kind of fun. It allows me to say, hey, I like having fun, so I'll go grab one of those on a sale or on a whim and say, hey, this was a pretty fun toy.
Right, I wouldn't make a rule against that. Like, I wouldn't make a rule against owning Cyberverse. I wouldn't make a rule against owning BotBots because those rules wouldn't make me happy, right? So, like, you definitely shouldn't, like, I agree with Christian, you shouldn't make rules that wouldn't make you happy. If a rule would make you happy, you should make it. Like, the one that's been shaky for me has been the movie rule. Like, I told myself, you have to stop buying movie stuff because it pisses you off. Like, because I think a lot of the designs are super cool and they're really fun. But I've hardly ever enjoyed ever playing with a movie design toy because their transformations make me angry most of the time. The more simple ones are fine, and sometimes the more complex ones are fine. But for the most part, they make me mad. So I just told myself, you have to stop doing this. But I do run into difficulties with that rule. Like the Studio Series Grimlock, the later one, is so good, and it doesn't piss me off that I just had to break my rule on that one. Ugh. And I hated breaking that rule because it's like, oh, it's a movie figure, but dang it, it's so good. So I had to kind of expand it where, my movie figure rule kind of changed and morphed to where it became if I really like a character and if I really think it's a worthwhile figure. Like the one that violates it is the Bumblebee style, the Bumblebee movie Optimus Prime. I have because I really like the design, but I don't like the toy. So I probably do need to get rid of it. Because it's on the edge of my rule. The Bumblebee design Bumblebee, I definitely need to get rid of. Not so sure anyone would give me 50 cents for that thing, but...
Would be wrong.
The tough
cents?
More like $55.
I'll take it.
The tough thing for me is I feel like that, Mike, my personal collecting rules kind of clash with yours, Anna. And mine is to stay in my lane. So, like, and I break this, every once in a while, and then I'm like, what have I done? I need to sell this crap off. But, like, I try to say I'm only collecting X line. So, like, I'm collecting, the Generations line, like, main line. Like, I used to collect Masterpiece and Third Party. I still collect a little bit of third party, but it's mainly like MMC, IDW character, kind of stuff. And so for me, like that, like kind of fits into where like I can have multiple characters, but it has to be within that. Whereas you are like 1 per character, but it could be like from anything. It could be some crazy Chinese knockoff, like whatever, and that's your 1 character. And so, but I couldn't do that. It like just frustrates me to collect like that. Because I just see it as not fitting into my collection if it's some weirder thing. But you've totally made it work. I know that I think, we've all seen your collection, and it somehow all works with all of the eclectic stuff you have.
I was showing it off to the book club people last night, and I kept saying, both Paul and Lucas have called my collection eclectic when they saw it. And it's like, well, yeah, people do call my collection eclectic, and it definitely is. Like, just
not
looking
a
at my
code
desk
word.
here.
It's just what it is.
It's the truth. No, it definitely is. I have my Swindle here, and then, okay, I guess it's a generation figure too, shield face, double shield face. But then, I've got this Minerva setting here that's completely out of the aesthetic with them, and then some tiny turbo changers. One I painted. Why did I paint a tiny turbo changer? Because I think it's fantastic and I love it.
It makes it look good.
It's fun. And then, here's a random third-party figure of a GoBot. Why? Because it's cool and I like it. So yes, it is eclectic. There's also a Baldwin doll on my desk. I mean, what the hell? I just have things I like.
I've seen a lot of people's collections over the years, and like some of them stand out. You're like, whoa, this is not like the others, and like yours is in that group. I would say it's like Botch the Crab, who like 10 years ago, like, I got all the Pretenders, man, and he like has them up on his wall, like, and you're like, you have the Pretenders, but like now it's like, wow, that's really cool and retro, and a lot of people did not like those toys for a long time, but it's cool that someone appreciates this thing that a lot of people overlook. And I think you have a lot of that in your your collection. Not only that.
Well, I think that's
you have a baller collection.
I think it's an important point to bring up, Paul, because now that we're all online, we can see each other's collections a lot. And I've got to say, I have seen a complete G184 set more times than probably anything else. That's not unique. I've seen a full collection of all the Masterpiece Arc guys. Like, everyone does that. What is it about your collection that makes you unique? And if that's what you want, please do it. But when I was, way deep into Masterpiece, I kept seeing it as like, well, I'm doing the same thing that everyone else is doing. Right. That doesn't make me happy. So I got rid of them. Now I'm Mr. Botbot. I have a complete set from series 1 through 5. Is anyone else? Probably not. Do I? Yeah, and it makes me happy.
Yeah, that was one of the things that helped get me out of Masterpieces, because everybody else had the DTOFs filled with, G1 Masterpiece and third party, whatever. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess that's cool, sure. But then I always appreciated the guys like, Paul or Rick or Peter or whatever, that would pull out just this really crazy rare stuff that, I don't know, I appreciate that more, I feel like, than the stuff that everybody has.
Lucas, tell the story of my displays that you saw and made fun of me for, and that's what ultimately got me out of Masterpiece.
Oh, you shamed him out of Masterpiece?
Yes, because so he had these DTOFs set up behind him. So he had these DTOFs all set up with great lighting and whatever, right? And he had it for his Lego The Bionicle collection and his mainline figures and all that from Transformers, right? And then on this $30 Walmart shelf or whatever over in the corner in the dark, he had all these Fans Toys, Dinobots and stuff, And I'm look, what is this? If you're not going to display those right, obviously you do not prefer those figures if they're just sitting there in the corner like that.
My Fans Toys Dinobots are in the bottom of a Besta behind a door that has no glass. It's just opaque and gray, and they're hidden, and I don't care.
I cared, and that's what got me out. So it was Lucas was right. I was really nicely lighting stuff I cared about and putting off in a corner in an unlit shelf that I actually found at a dumpster. All these valuable toys. I was like, what is the point of this? They're gathering dust, so I sold them. It was great. And now that shelf is lighted. I lighted it over the summer. It looks much nicer now.
And, I think that points out just one rule that really matters to me. And I think in some ways it matters to Christians sometimes. I know that you do bend to an extent, but you also bend rotate. So you take things out of bends. at times. They don't live in bins forever. Like, that is one definite rule I have that I cannot break. Like, that would bother me too much. Like, it would really bother me to have toys I couldn't display or I didn't display. Like, they need to be up. And I know a lot of you do the whole bin thing, and right, he's got the hashtag bin life totally up there. And it's fine. Like, other people enjoy that type of collecting. I don't, like, at all. Like, the fact that I have some things in my closet still that I haven't displayed. Like, I have my old dolls that I used to collect that I haven't displayed because my husband finds them creepier than my Transformers. They are creepier than my Transformers, but they're great. It makes me sad. Like, I think, like, man, those are being wasted. Those are super cool. They need to be out, and they need to change clothes sometimes and all that kind of stuff. And it bums me out. So, that's a rule I can't break. The one per character is more of a, like, space limitation thing and just trying to keep myself reasonable. But, like, the bin thing would just, I would go crazy.
I'd like to say two things. One, today I took a long lunch because my totes have been discontinued by Home Depot. So I have over 200 of the same tote. And now I don't know what to do. So I'm having a crisis. So I drove down two counties away and hit all the Home Depots in Sarasota and Bradenton, and found a big zilch. And I wrote I called their customer service line, and they were like, we can't tell you that it's discontinued, but we don't sell them anymore, and they're exclusive to this store. So there's that. That's one thing. So that's how totes I am. Two, they don't live in the tote forever. Occasionally you do an inventory. Like this weekend, I revisited all of my Animorphs. And let me tell you, it was something.
It was morphin' time.
As a kid, those books were amazing. I never had the toys, but the books, A+.
The books came out when I was like 18, and I was just like, this is not for me. These toys, these are also not for me, but they say Transformers, so I'd better get them.
The books were not for you, but the books were for me. That's our age difference. It was great.
So, Peter, what happens, back to the bins, like, are there other bins that are a similar size to that? Or, like, does it, like, could you somehow, like, switch to another bin for, like, another...
You got to convert
like area? How do you...
the super awesome $25 a piece container store archival totes. Those things are lit.
Well, see, I was gonna say the best bins to go to are those the black and yellow ones that are like ubiquitous everywhere now. Like those aren't good.
Guys,
no, those rot.
You guys know you're giving this guy advice on bins. He just told you he called the fucking company and complained about the bins not being made. I think he has more to say.
You're right.
I'm good. We're good.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Peter, because that is annoying.
I'm heartbroken and a little panicky. So.
I remember when I had to get some new bins, and I had all the same bin, but they're from Home Depot, and they're like a little more... Wait, yours are from Home Depot too, right?
Yeah, they were okay. So I actually have two styles of bin. I've got the Rubbermaid Roughneck 37-gallon, and then they replaced those in 2018, around summer of 2018, with the Husky 37-gallon, which was slightly different dimensions, but same colors and same volume, and they stack well enough. Well, now the Huskies are gone, and they're not replacing them with anything, and there's nothing at Home Depot, Lowe's. We got a Tractor Supply now, and they're not there. You know where they are? You know where they are? To our Canadian listeners, they're at Continental Tire, but they won't ship to the United States. They have them there. There's all the ones I want in Canada, and I was told I could plan a road trip, but I can't drive in the winter to Canada for my Florida ass. I'll die in Vermont somewhere on my way to... Yeah, so I can't. I need help. Someone help me.
The dying part wasn't funny, of course, Peter, but the way you phrased it.
I'll be back.
I'm a little concerned that you're considering taking a road trip over to Canada in order to source bins.
You know, I'll take a road trip to do whatever.
That's
Pick me
true.
up on the way. We'll go together. It'll be great.
Sounds reasonable to me. If you have a bin rule, you have to follow it.
See, gotta follow the rules.
You got to do it.
Well, guidelines. Yeah, like because I have two types, and I want them to stay within that. So I've like seriously, I've been checking Craigslist all over Florida, all over Georgia, and I've got people that are willing to help me out with stuff like that. So I'm checking in their local areas to look for people who are selling stuff on Facebook Marketplace and on Craigslist. If they're selling totes that are my totes, I want those totes.
Yeah, what kind of totes are they again?
The ones that are currently available or were currently available are Husky 37-gallon high top storage totes. They're black and gray with a black lid. Oh, and at one of the Home Depots, they had 7 lids, but no totes. So I wandered the store, and they had requisitioned the totes for random like their own storage in the store, like, and they had marked on it with marker like this is so and so's blah blah crap, and it's like, I want that. That's for me. That's my tote. But it wasn't my tote. So follow the rules. Paul, you haven't said anything, and you have some rules of your own for your collection. Let's hear what you got.
Well, I was going to tell a tote story, but I think we've moved on. So
No, tell your tote story, and then we can move on to your next thing.
It's irrelevant at this point.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, I've been listening pretty intently on what you guys are saying, and I'm trying to figure out like what I want to say about it. But like I think rules are good, but I like the idea of them being guidelines because you do have to break them once in a while. And Christian mentioned the thing about I don't have a problem with this. I just think like the longer you're a collector, the harder it is to stick to like a monetary sort of ceiling because it's almost like it's like emotional to break it for the first time. And I don't know, it seems a lot of people break it, and I see a lot of people talking about that. Like, I thought I would never spend more than $50 on a toy, and then they're holding like $1,000 combiner. I'm like, whoa, bruh. Like it just, sometimes it goes really fast. But so I think the idea of guidelines is good. I mean,
I think that on myself later in my career. Like this is a year-old rule at this point.
Oh, well, that's
it's not a thing that's always been there.
But again, it's something where it's more of a guideline for you, Christian, not like a rule. Because, like, for example, the last member of the DJD from MMC is dropping, and that is not a, that is definitely over $100, So it's just one of those, like, do you really want it kind of thing. Like,
yes, and that's what it's meant to do. It's meant to make me think, do I really want this as much as it costs?
Well, where I see that really coming into play is keeping you from overpaying for figures too. Yeah. Especially like these days with so much stuff that's like disappearing and before it even comes out and that kind of crap. So, patience is something you really have to like have discipline in this hobby to know like when to buy something and when not to, and like if you have a price, if you wait long enough, it'll come around. It might be like 10 years, but it'll happen. So that's a whole nother type of rule, that I think is really important. And I don't think that was really the focus of this discussion. It's more about like what do you collect and why sort of thing, and why don't you collect other things?
Well, I think that's a good point to make, Paul, because that was a rule I always had for myself with everything before I started like heavy in this hobby and I got my first like serious adult job as a professor, was that I never paid full price for anything. If I wanted something, I would hunt around for a coupon or something. I would wait for the Toys R Us Christmas ad to go buy a Masterpiece figure so I could get a small discount on it. I would use that Target coupon that came out every year to get a discount on something if I wanted an expensive Transformer. I never paid full price. I waited for clearance. I waited for sales. I wouldn't just be like, oh, day one, going toy hunting, have to find this. I would go find it, and then I would come back and try to get it when it went on sale, when there was a buy two get one or something. And for back in the day, that actually brought me a bunch of pleasure. Now I don't do it anymore.
Well, it's harder to do now.
It really is.
It's just harder because the toy industry, I'm assuming, this is what I keep hearing, the toy industry has shrunk so much that they just produce less and they put out more stuff more quickly, blah, blah, blah. But as far as like my collecting rules, I don't remember. I do remember why I did this. I decided, because I was kind of, I think like most collectors, you start up and you're just like, yeah, I'm going to get everything, just like Christian said. And even though you know it's like pretty unattainable, you just try. You're like, I'll just pick, I don't have that, I'll pick that up. I don't have that, I'll pick that up. But after a while, all these other things you've mentioned set in. Like, I don't like all this stuff. Why do I have it? It's taking up space. It's costing me money. So, like, I think if you want to stay, that can set a lot of people off of the hobby. Like, oh, forget it. I don't want to do it. But if you set your rules up for, like, you can, if you set up the rules that make you happy and make sense, you can have some longevity in the fandom. Like, because your rules will evolve and because the brand evolves and all that stuff. But if you make some pretty realistic and what I think can be fun rules, you can do pretty good. And so, I always bring up the character collecting thing, but that was what happened when I saw that website that Elvin Pena put up, which was and this is almost laughable these days, but like back in like 2004 or 5, he put up this website that just he had an MISB of every Optimus Prime. And pretty much every kind you could think of, like not 100% of the variants, but a lot of them. And I was like just seeing them all in real life, photographs on his table, one after the other, I was just like, this is what I want to do. This is awesome. But I was like, I don't want to do Optimus Prime because this guy's done it. So I'm going to do, I guess I like Starscream. So that's what happened. And I met that dude at 2006. It was either 2006 or 2007 BotCon. He had a table because he was selling it. He was selling all this crazy stuff. Like he had the lucky draws and he had the lunchtime specials, all that stuff. And so I met him. He was just sitting there at his table, and I was just like, dude, I love you. Like, I love what you do. It's awesome. It really inspired me. That's kind of like why I collect the way I do. And it's just funny because he was getting out. He's like, well, okay. You want this Optimus Prime? It's like, no. But, I think he just felt like he had achieved what he wanted to. Plus, he had a kid coming. And so he was like, well, I'm out. And since then, I've still been going. I've been on this trek to get like all the Starscreams mint and sealed box, like ready to, like they were on the shelf. That's what I have been going for. And, that is enough to keep one person busy for Transformers. But at some point, you get them all. So then you're like, well, wait a minute. Are there more? Are there other ones I've never seen before? Your rules will evolve as your collection evolves. And so now it's like, oh, I don't have the 1986 Starscream that has a different assortment number on the box that came with Cyclonus and Scourge after the movie, which is something I didn't even really know existed until The
Hartmans made a note. The Hartmans made notes of all the assortment numbers and stuff, and then I started plugging them into Schmax.
Oh.
So where you see them on Schmax, that's me.
All right. Well, I saw it from I Am Ratchet. He had one. He's like, oh, this is a special assortment number. Did you know it? I'm like, I didn't know. But I did not buy that from him. It was cool, though.
You're going to need it at some point. At some point, you're going to be like, exactly like you said, I've run out of things to buy, I think. Oh, here's a thing. And then you're going to get it.
Yeah, it's just, like when you're talking like you're buying a unique piece from I Am Ratchet that's like special, it's like forget the monetary rules at that point. Goodbye.
There are no monetary rules if you want everything. Whatever it is that you want. Yeah.
We live to sabotage each other. I enjoy watching it.
Well, I'm also pretty satisfied. Like I'm kind of done, Like I'm never done, but unless it's like at this point all I need is stuff going forward mostly. Because I've kind of got all the things on my list. Which feels, actually, I'm at peace with it. Like, a lot of people can't handle it if they get there. They're like, well, that's why they start digging in now. They need the more expensive stuff, and suddenly those monetary rules disappear. But I feel like I'm pretty good with it. Like I'm pretty happy. I just need to like do something with it, like make a public. Maybe I don't. Maybe I don't need to show it off. Maybe I just need to be happy. I know I got it because that's
make
but you
a
also
website, like spinning icons and spinning star screams. They're like the box art, like really cheesy, and it has like music that plays.
Oh, and like GIF
8-bit,
galore.
yeah.
I used to own Starscreamer.com, but I don't anymore.
Yeah, that got sold to a different company. Don't go to that site.
I don't think I'm there. But I do have other collections though.
I was gonna say you started doing other character collecting as well, right? Like, have you?
Yeah.
I know Grimlock is one of them, right? And I think
I see Jetfire.
Yeah. So that's how I collect loose figures now. I just get Optimus. I mean, the list is pretty long. It's like, at some points I've been like, oh, should I collect this and that? Like I've thought about, oh, I should start a Ratchet collection, but I'm like, no. Like you don't really like Ratchet. I don't know. Like it's mostly A-listers, and it's not because they're A-listers. It's because I like those characters.
right.
But like I like Astro Train and Blitzwing, but I don't care about Springer. For instance. Mostly Decepticons, but yeah. So I will for my non-Starscream character collections. That's how I buy new toys. Essentially, I will there's a Shockwave in this line. Okay, I'll buy it and I'll open it, and I'll put it in with all the other ones. And I, unlike what you were describing, Anna, I really do dig seeing them all together and see. And to me, it doesn't matter if they're good or bad. It's Shockwave, so it's there. You know what I mean? Like that's my hang up is right there. So but that also means I do not get to enjoy a lot of cool new toys that come out. Like I don't buy the Sideswipe, or I don't buy any of the modulator, any character that doesn't fit. I just maybe if I see it at someone else's house, I can be like, oh, cool. But like I can usually get the toy from looking at the pretty pictures online. I'm like, oh, I can see. Like I don't know the transformation, but I'm like, oh, that's neat. Like it's good enough for me just to know it's out there. Then some little voice in my head saying, "Go get it. Go get that Scorponok." Like I don't need to go there.
So one thing, when I switched to the Transformers mainline stuff, like I felt like I had, I wanted to get like all of it, like all the Hasbro mainline like generation stuff that's coming out. And I've recently kind of been reevaluating that, just because the fact that Hasbro's released so many of the same character like over and over again, like in slightly different decos. So like the fact that they released Siege, and the fact that they released Earthrise now, and the fact that they're doing Netflix, and these are all like just slightly different and like some exclusives and whatever. And I'm like, man, I really don't need this many Megatrons, or I don't need this many, like I feel like if they had spaced it out more, like the fact that we would get one per character like every couple years or whatever, like I like it doesn't feel the same as like the fact that it's like, oh, here's like 3 prowls or whatever, like all that kind of stuff. So I don't know, Christian, I know you've kind of felt the same way. I know we've done former shows on this as well, but I feel like it's starting to break me that I'm gonna have to get rid of some of that stuff.
It's hard, and you have to go in and pick which one, like which is the Megatron. You can never pick just one. It's like, well, I like G2 Megatron, here's my G1 Megatron, and here's my Action Master Megatron, and just you gotta pick all the certain things. But another weird thing that I do that I'm not even sure all of you guys know about, I like to, if I really like a figure, like if I really like the mold, I like to get every version of that mold released that isn't a lucky draw. Because lucky draws are their own rabbit hole. So I've done that 4 times. They're all with Optimus Primes, interestingly enough. I did it with Classics Optimus, Animated Voyager Optimus, Prime First Edition Optimus, and the Age of Extinction Leader Optimus. I don't know why they're all Optimuses. I don't. You've seen my Seeker collection. They're all lined up that way, so you can see if they're all the same. That's a weird thing that I do, but a rule there, like I said, is to not get lucky draws, because I will never find them. It will never happen. and that's okay.
You never know.
It will never happen at a price I am willing to pay.
See, you just added a rule to it. Nah.
See, that's
And I'm okay with
definitely one of those things where I definitely have a Paul-like thing where I think that the mold collecting looks really cool when Christian does it. Like, his mold displays are really fun. When I look at those, I go, wow, that's really neat, Christian. That's a fun little display. It's cool. And I definitely 1,000,000,000% don't want to do it. Like, I more or less have a very kind of loose, I don't collect the same mold more than once unless it's significantly different or, like, I'm just in love with the mold and I need both those characters. Otherwise, I try to stick to one per mold as well, just so I have more variety in my collection.
There's two interesting sub-stories about the way I do that. I got all the Classics Optimuses, and then a month later I sold half of them. Because I'm like, I don't even really like all of these, but I got them all to accomplish the goal. Now the goal is done, and I got rid of them. On the contrary...
You pulled an Elvin Pena?
I guess. Yeah, I sold about half of them. Serge has one, Nick got a couple. I don't know where the others went. It's been several years since I did that. It was right after, what's his name? Peter, the Powered Convoy one.
2017?
Yeah. What's his name?
The Powered Convoy one.
Magna Convoy.
Magna Convoy. Thank you.
Blue
on the
dude.
opposite side, the Prime First Edition Prime is my very favorite Transformers toy of all time. So much so that I'm now getting KO colors of it because I want more. So I got a Nemesis one because they never made one. I've got a Shatterglass one on order because they never made one of those either. And if that company continues to make knockoffs of that mold, I'm going to keep buying them because I love it so much.
You know it's not the same mold anymore, right? Once the KO
Yeah,
companies
I know.
get it. Oh, okay.
But it transforms the same and it looks the same, so it's close enough. And if Hasbro decided to resurrect that mold and actually release those colors like they're doing, with Breakdown or whatever, I would get rid of my KOs in a heartbeat and get the officials. But they don't exist, so I'm expanding my collection my own way.
And I think an important thing that, like, we've all been kind of getting at, but we haven't said out loud, is that, like, I think we've kind of illustrated that, trying to follow Christian's rules would drive me crazy. And Lucas will often comment on my rules as if he thinks I might be slightly crazy because of the way I collect things. Sometimes people call my collection eclectic in a positive way like Paul does, and some people call it eclectic in a not so positive way, like, it's disorganized or random or something like that. And I think, like, our rules are self-serving. Right? Like, they may sound crazy to you, they may sound problematic to each other, but that's because they are literally self-serving. Because I wouldn't get any joy from owning a whole bunch of Ironhides, right? Like, that would not excite me. Ironhide does not matter enough to me. I want one Ironhide. I want him to be a cool Ironhide.
And you said you tried to do it. You did it with Magnus, and it didn't do it for you.
Right. It didn't excite me. But you know what does excite me? The fact that my collective rules don't have any rules that keep me from owning crap like this. I have a little frog guy. There's nothing in my rules to keep me from buying a weird toy from a Chinese toy line that I know almost nothing about, where you take his legs off and put him on his back and open his chest size and make him into a little frog dude.
Do it.
Chest
Do
size?
it.
Well, wait. Okay. Quick question about that. So if your rules don't stop it, so is it because does it fit like a puzzle piece into your rule somewhere, or does it bypass them 100%, and that's why it works?
No, I guess it really does fit into my rules, because I will buy something that I think is a fun toy and a unique robot thing. Like, I will always get those. That is needed. That's
and it is the only frog. It's the only frog guy you have, so it fits the one character thing.
Yeah, I don't have. There are
that-
several versions of this character out there.
There are?
There's several. Oh yes, there's like 4 versions, and I'm only gonna own the one. I got the one that I thought was coolest. I definitely researched it, but here's frog mode for everybody. Open his chest size, and this is fun to me, right? Like, I would be bummed if I had a rule that said I don't get to own this thing, and I don't. I get to own this thing. It's weird, it's goofy, and it's fun.
No frog formers. That would be a sad rule.
I'm really gonna have to take that with me and think about it. Is it there because it fits, or is it there because it doesn't not fit? That's. Ooh,
I wasn't trying to bust any brains with that one, but you never know.
Well, advertising for 2 weeks from now, this is what we're talking about. How do I make my collection fit what I want for the rest of my life? That's generally the topic we're having in 2 weeks. Come back to that.
Sometimes our minds are easily blown. It's because we take collecting too seriously.
That's true.
Yeah, I know. I feel like that we all have these like existential crises like every so often, you know, and
It's because your rules don't work.
yeah.
You stick to the rules. Peter and I, we got our rules down.
Yeah, that's great.
So the
Been
toast
good.
thing.
My
Yes,
crisis
yes.
entirely comes from the fact that this is suddenly a freaking office, right? Like, this did not used to be an office. This used to be the toy room where Anna went and did things on her computer and looked at her toys. Now, it's a freaking office where I have to be a professor. Ugh. So I have to make modifications to make this more office-y over the break. That's my existential crisis.
You know, that's it. Have we done a topic about like how the pandemic has affected our collecting directly? Because that's
No, we haven't. We'll have to
Be a good
we'll have to add that to the list here. Yeah,
I have
you're
so
right.
much to talk about with that one.
might
Just
want to
maybe
get need a
Once
guest or
it's
something.
done.
this is just not a workplace. This is a wonderful museum.
So,
Right?
Paul, could you ever see yourself like selling your Starscream collection, or is it like, are you gonna get buried with that stuff?
Great question. I have thought about selling a lot of my stuff a lot of times, and I can usually like stave it off, you know, but I don't like the question is always like, well, what could you the question is never like, will you sell the Starscreams? It's like, what other than the Starscreams would you sell? Because like I could probably be perfectly happy with just the Starscreams, and then like they're not all out by any means. So, and then that leads me down a path where I'm like, well, if that's really what you care about, why do you have this other stuff? You know, and why can't you just let it go? And
Back in 2 weeks.
yeah. So, but I mean, I have definitely. There's one time in my life where I really like was like, what am I doing? Like I got like snapped out of it in a way. And this was quite a few years ago, and I remember it, and I was like, what am I doing? It's time to get rid of this stuff.
It's a scary one.
It felt okay, but it kind of went away. I'm like, no, I actually do like this, and I guess I would just. I find reasons to keep it, but I'm having a kid soon, and maybe my priorities will change. But I can't imagine I would get rid of the Starscreams because it's just. I wouldn't say it's part of my identity, but I'm very personally satisfied by it.
They make you happy.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to. I've thought about what if the house burnt down, but like I'm not starting over. Like that would be awful, but I don't know what I'd do. So I'm not going to sell the Starscreams. Bottom line.
Yeah, that's what I was curious if you were, since you're having a kid on the way, if you've been rethinking your collecting yourself.
If I was going to get rid of something, and I've already sold, I sold all my animated toys, mint and sealed box. I've sold most of my Prime toys, mint and sealed box. I still have classics and a lot of the mainline stuff still, but I'm like, why do I need to keep this? It was all I got it because I thought it would be the penultimate edition, but the goalposts keep changing every few years, so it's like a silly thing, and I probably will toss it at some point.
I know
I
you
won't
only
toss
asked
it.
if Paul.
So
I know you only
Peter,
asked if Paul would be buried with his toys, but I want to be buried with my frog. Make it happen.
So Peter, could you ever see yourself? I think you've answered that before, that you've had to sell parts of your collection over the years. Is that right?
There were a couple of instances where, out of personal necessity or whatever, I had to offload some things, and then I immediately bought them back. because, yup.
Could you ever see yourself like selling a chunk of your collection at this point, or?
That's a tough one to answer. I'd like to say, yeah, it'll be super easy to sell some toys, but I don't know that it'll. Yeah, yep. I don't have a need for it, so I don't want to touch it yet in my brain.
Right.
I can say that if I had to make choices, they would be difficult choices. I wouldn't want to sell my 86 masterpiece guys, because the 86 cast is everyone's my friends, but man, something about 86. And my Gen 1 stuff wouldn't go. Any of it. Japanese, European, US, it's too perfect. And yeah. And maybe Chug. And maybe Animorphs. And Kiss players. Yeah.
Q Transformers. Gotta keep them all.
My Koro Qs, my Q Transformers, my Q Robos. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're gonna keep that, you might as well keep Cyberverse and
and my clones and my SCFs and my RPMs and my Speed Stars and my Hero Mashers. Come back next week for part 2 of our what the hell are these lines? Because it's gonna be great.
And I'm gonna be over there in the corner, just kind of like staring blankly while you and Rick rattle off 10 years of Transformer sublines. It'll be great. So.
Peter, if you had to put it in one hand or the other, which is more important to you, masterpiece or the masterpiece you mentioned, the 86 or whatever, the masterpiece figures you like, or like G1 stuff?
G1, no question.
G1 is the pinnacle.
Burn everything. Leave the G1 alone.
Sick.
And when you say G1, you mean vintage G1, I'm assuming, right?
I mean, yes.
Yeah. Mitten Seal box, all of it.
I'll admit, there's something special about having the actual vintage stuff sometimes. Like, I'm not a vintage collector at all, but recently my husband went through some of his old toys from childhood, and he didn't collect Transformers, and he just randomly was like, hey, I've got this, like, I think it's a train, but also a man, and maybe it's a spaceship too. I don't know what the hell this is. And I was like, woo, an Astro train. I was so excited. And like, it was really fun to sit down and just play with the G1 Astro train. I've never owned a G1 Astro train before. I got to play with it. There's something special about that toy that kind of just like, I don't know. I don't ever want to get rid of it now because it's cool. It lives with my Octane I've had forever. They'll be friends.
Well, and the thing that was great about G1 is that they were very eclectic, because, they bought all these different toy lines, from various, like, oh, they're robots, and so they had the Takara ones, and, they had the, they bought a couple from Bandai, or whatever, some of the Bandai stuff, and, like, whatever, various vintage toy lines and stuff, and then Hasbro came up with their own designs and whatever too, and so like that, like I feel like that it's very, it's like Skylinks, like where did that thing come from,
Toy box.
Takatoken toys.
Right.
Toy box.
Guys, he came from outer space.
He came from heaven because he's such a fun design and so weird.
Toy box.
Peter's more right than Christian is. I think Peter's all the way right. I don't know what I'm saying. Do you know what I'm saying, Peter?
I know what you're saying, and I'm not always right.
In this instance, you're right.
Oh, I know.
So, do we have any collecting rules that you guys have that we haven't covered yet?
Well, no one's talked about, packaging variants and that stuff. I guess I touched on it, but like, that's where the fun begins.
We want to talk about rabbit holes.
Yeah.
That's beyond me.
I don't collect anything to keep in box.
Well,
me neither.
I would say most collectors, the majority, ignore international variants that Peter touched on earlier. Like the mask stuff from South America or whatever. And, like there's a whole nother there's like, you know, the brand is a tree, and there's like these stems that shoot off at certain points for other countries, and then, you know, sometimes it's not just the packaging that's a variant, it's like the whole damn toy is different, and that's really fun. And the instructions can be different, and the accessories can be different, and some people like act like that doesn't matter, and that's fine. You can ignore it if you want, but like I party with the dudes that like care that the Italian Seekers have bopper missiles, you know, and that's why we call them bopper missiles.
And the Autobot cars, and in Mexico for the IGA Megatron, he was a heroic Autobot, and Redfoot Prime, and just there's so, and you want to talk, you're into mini-bots. You're doing all the crazy mini-bots, and Ronan's into mini-bots. There are a lot of people into mini-bots, and just mini-bots are insane globally. They're just so much fun. The Estrella and the Antex and all the other like rando colored stuff and the micro-change stuff. It's so much fun, and it's so daunting, and I can't wait till I get to the point where, because I'm not into mini-bots yet. I have a couple of Estrellas and a couple of Antexes, but I don't have any of the like really hard to find stuff. I don't have like Constructicon gears or anything like that. But I really can't. He's really cool. I can't wait to get to the point where I'm buying Outback colored bronze or whatever the hell is going on, Pipes colored Huffers, and getting to the point where my collection's like, well, I've got all this crap. Cool. Let's go get some fun stuff, you know, and get reinvigorated. I was talking with Lady Destron just this past weekend because I'm getting to the point in my collection where I have to buy a bunch of boxed Superlink stuff. And I don't want to buy a bunch of boxed Superlink stuff because Superlink doesn't excite me. And I already have all the Energon stuff, and this is going to be lame, and I'm going to be not invigorated. She's like, you're going to find something that you're going to be invigorated and excited about to get. And things like mini-bots and chasing those around and chasing rando IGAs and rando gig stuff, that's exciting. And finding new ways to adapt your rules to keep the excitement going and chasing that high, if that's what it is, because someone mentioned that in the comments, I think, then by all means, my old ass is going to be chasing that dragon for the rest of my days.
Yeah, so talk about end game content for gamers.
But my question though, Peter, is like when you talk about like your rules that is making you buy things you don't want to buy, like is it just something where it's like it's just going to be this like itch in the back of your brain forever if you don't do it? Like, so it's almost like, all right, I guess I have to do it. I have to get these things, but they don't.
It's compulsion.
Like,
yeah. If I don't get the Superlink stuff, my brain will be mad at me and it'll impact me in other ways. So,
but like, why do you have to do it now? You could just be like, well, I'm going to get it later, and that later might be 20 years from now.
I could do it later. I could do it in 20 years, and that would be great. But if I can afford it now and get it done now and just check those boxes now and forget about it now, then I'm going to do that shit now. I'm almost done. I'm a couple figures away from being done with Beast Wars Neo, aside from the rando merch stuff. Almost done with Beast Wars Second. I'm talking like sealed sets. Japanese, regular Beast Wars, non-metals, non-returns, non-Telemoka, non-Neo, non-Second. I'm just regular Beast Wars. Almost done. So I'm running out of, and those all excite me. I'm excited when I'm like going through my metal sets. I'm like, ooh, look at this, look. It's a lot of fun. And then I look at Micron Densetsu, and it's like, oh.
Can I interject a question here for that?
Go.
So if you're saying that you would like to finish Superlink now because you can afford to do so, or Micron Densetsu because you can afford to do so and they're available and you can do it, right?
When I say afford, I can afford to knock out Micron Densetsu and I can afford to knock out Superlink while doing things that keep me excited. Does that make sense? So I don't have to only chase Superlink and be mad at it for 5 months or whatever, however long it takes me to finish it up. I can get 8 Superlink figures over here and then a couple of G1 things over here. Then I'm like, ooh, that's pretty. And I can get a few more Superlink things over here and get a couple of more Japanese Beast Wars things over here and be like, ooh, those are pretty and fun. Rather than I've gotten all the fun stuff that I've been wanting to chase. All my Beast Wars stuff is done. All my Gen 1 stuff is done. All my rando, like, heart love it stuff is done. And now all I have left is Chromehorn Forest and Command Jaguar Desert.
Will you please give me a Chromehorn Forest?
Okay.
Or a Shadowhawk Cosmo type. I love that thing.
Yeah, they're pretty. Those ones are pretty, actually. The Terracons are
real
pretty.
question is, I mentioned, I wouldn't go after MP Hound because for that same price I could get 8 Earthrise Deluxes. I guess I'm trying to ask you, if you didn't get that Superlink stuff, you could maybe chase one of the Estrella mini bots. Why wouldn't you do that instead, or do you just not see it that way?
I will get to the Estrella minibots, and I want to chase them longer and later.
Okay.
The one thing that I will say is I've seen some people where they've gotten into their in-game collecting, and like if you don't have a mix and you're on an even keel, it can actually be kind of detrimental, because like you'd see them and they were like, I have 2 figures that I want to get, and it's I can't even remember what it was, but it's like they listed off, like whatever, and so they spend all year just trying to find only those 2 figures, and it's almost kind of sad because they're just trying to check that box. Like it almost just became, because those figures are so hard, that those specific ones are so hard to find, it's almost like it's frustrating to them, because they're not getting anything else. Like they've done everything else and they're just to that. So like I do feel like if you can try to keep your collection to where you're like on an even keel and like scratching your itch is as often as you need to, and not getting it to the point where collecting is fun and not crazy.
Yeah, the crazy thing, because I'm kind of manic. It comes in waves. I don't know if you guys know. And I'll tell her I'm so excited. I'm gonna do this series or whatever it is, and it's the series of the month. And I'm chasing this, and it's gonna be great. I'm gonna get it. And she's like, okay, I believe you. And then I immediately shift focus and get distracted by some other thing, and I'm going to chase this series to the end, and I have to keep that balance of not throwaway but just stuff versus treasures. If I don't hit both on a regular basis, then my brain starts to freak out.
Does timing matter for you, like as far as chasing Superlink now instead of later? Like I would think that this might be a decent time to look for Superlink because it's not super expensive yet.
It's not super expensive. No one has any nostalgia for it, and it's all available online, sealed. Do it.
Yeah. So I think that kind of maybe helps answer a question you maybe had, Christian. Like the timing might be right for that kind of thing, whereas people are excited for Prime again because it's 10 years. Like maybe Prime is not the time to be searching for stuff. Right. Not that you're looking. I bet you have all that stuff already, Peter. But yeah, I think timing matters in regards to future price.
Yes, that does answer part of my question. Just the way Peter collects is so foreign to the way I collect that the timing versus price thing doesn't even really come into consideration for me. But I do understand the point.
Yeah, well, when you're trying to complete like a whole line that is 10 years old, like that stuff, you got to think about those things because it's a vector.
I've recently been toying with the idea of completing Cybertron.
Do it.
And it's half expensive, half not, half available, half not. And it gets more complicated when you go to Japan and get the Galaxy Force dudes, like all the Micron boosters, because those weren't really super available over here. And then, anyway, it's a whole thing. We'll talk about it in 2 weeks because I've had some evolving thoughts on it as I've started this project.
Sick.
Yeah. And no one cares about Cybertron. I care about Cybertron because it was like the line that took me from kid to collector. Because I liked Transformers as a kid, and then you kind of have to make a bridge somewhere, or you quit and come back to it later. I never quit and came back to it. I bridged over with Cybertron.
Yeah, I didn't quit. It was just like I guess I'm at this level now. Well, oh no.
A lot of interesting things happened to me in 2005 to turn me into who I am now.
I'd be interested to hear more.
You know most of it.
Maybe we can talk to Alec Willows about it. We can yeah.
I will never forget that.
I was going to mention tomorrow night on Microcasters, we are going to be doing. Who are we doing, Anna?
It's a gigawatt, right?
Gigawatt, which you're
Is it
super excited about.
Gigawatt or
Gigawatt.
gigawatt? It's gigawatt.
It's
Yeah.
gigawatt for me because I've never seen the movie.
Jumping
And-
gigawatts.
I also want to mention, I
half
think
the time.
Amazon had the trilogy on sale on Blu-ray for like $15. Like, just get it,
What?
Anna. Yeah.
Grab that.
I should have done. I need to grab that and just send it to Anna for Christmas and be like, "Here you go. You're welcome."
Will Christian sneak in a backdoor Tiger Track review too, since they're the kind of same mold? Find out tomorrow.
Jazzmeister in the chat is asking us, how often do we reevaluate our rules, if ever?
Roughly
All
every
the time.
30 seconds.
Never.
I would say probably daily, right?
At least every month or two.
I write them on my wall every day,
I don't know.
obsessively.
I feel like that this is our like number one conversation that we have where we all talk about these various rules.
I mean, sometimes I'll think about getting another character. Like, oh, I'm going to get Ratchet. But then I kind of like say, why? And I just go
Because
back.
Ratchet's awesome. He's an important character throughout the mythos since '84, and he's got really great toys, and he's your friend.
Those
He's
are
your
the
friend.
Those are the reasons why I was considering it. I was like, oh, yeah, I want some Ratchet in my life. He's cool. Like, I never thought he was as a kid. Now I'm like, he's a cool character. But I pump the brakes. I just go back to stick with what I know.
Take your foot off that brake.
Maybe. I should do it sooner than later if I'm going to do it.
I'm just a tiny bit obsessive, so I kind of check my like collection for my rules almost every day. Like pretty much when I walk into this room every time, I look around and make sure all my rules are being enforced and make sure that my collection is right.
Checklists
So
for the rules.
yeah. Only I keep my checklists in my brain because writing them down annoys me for some reason, which is worse. However, for that reason, I do often update my rules. Like, I often will look at things and be like, ooh, have I bent this too much? Have I changed the rule? Does the rule need to change, or do I need to change? And I have to make those decisions.
So we can kind of see why you like Ultra Magnus. Is that what you're saying? IDW Ultra Magnus?
Yes. I might be saying that. Wink.
So, book club this week is More Than Meets the Eye issues 12 and 13. If anyone wants to join on the Discord chat.
Yay, back to
Sunday
the good
night.
series.
And I want to say that I have kept up with book club. Like, I have made it through all the issues for 2 straight weeks while we haven't been reading More Than Meets the Eye. Watch me not be able to finish 2 issues. I just know this is going to happen.
12 and 13 is before and after, and the Hedonia thing, right? Where everyone with the holomatter avatars.
It does have holomatter avatars. I know I'll reread that one because I like it.
Yeah.
All right, Peter, that's where you're going to have me beat every time. I don't know the titles of the comics. You're going to beat me there. It's okay. You win.
Not a contest.
Yeah. Are we doing an oof my wallet this week, Paul?
I don't know. Ask Anna.
Yeah.
That's going to be 3 shows in a row if I do it, but I want to because I have some things to share.
You know what? If you don't do it, it's going to be 3 shows in a row you haven't done.
Oh.
3 weeks in a row we did not do the show.
And I cancel on you like a monster. It's true.
It's okay.
I do have some weird stuff to show off. I can always show off that Astro Train I stole from my husband.
You should. We'd love to have you. And we'll see if we can get... we want to just have at least 3. And so Rick and I have been like, should we just do it, you and me? I'm like, we could, but we keep deciding to cancel. So, it's better as a conversation with 3 people, at least. So
My eclectic stuff makes it much more interesting. Less of
It
my weird
does.
dinosaurs.
Yeah.
John, is that a box? It's another box?
Peter,
Oh.
you're invited, man. Everyone's invited.
Put one on the 16th for me.
So the intention is, yes, to have an oof on Wednesday.
Okay.
If there is a scheduled stream, then it'll definitely happen. If there isn't, it still might happen. Just
There we go. So yeah, so all the shows are at 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central. Tomorrow night is on the tftalk.net Facebook page. The other shows are on the YouTube streams. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we'll have we should have a cut the tape this week. Rick took Thanksgiving off, because life and all that kind of stuff. But he should be back this week. So with cut the tape. So. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you guys for weighing in on your rules. Thank you to everyone in the chat, Catherine, Zaldron, Jazzmeister, Josh, I'm trying to think, Gerardo. So yeah, thank you guys. Oh, Melvor, yes, there we go. Forgot that. Thank you. So I think that's everyone. So thank you guys. And we will see you next week.
Thanks for hanging out with us.